Part 28. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 271. Chapter 271 Concubine Shu's Miscarriage. Early the next morning, the Queen Mother sent someone to take Sulayun into the palace. "Miss, didn't you go to the Queen Mother's palace? Why did you bring the medicine box with you?" Mammy Jong asked in surprise when she saw Kualayu carrying the medicine box and following Sulayun out. This medicine box was specially obtained by Sulayun from a craftsman after he returned to the Sun Mansion. This is the first time he has used it. After Sulayun went to see the Queen Mother, she also wanted to go to Qin Gaifei's palace, but she did not explain in detail, just saying that it would be useful to take it with her. In front of the Sun Mansion, Sun Gro sent Sulayun out of the house. "I am entering the palace today. Mom can't accompany you. You should pay more attention to yourself." Seeing the worry in her mother's eyes, Sulayun reached out and hugged her. "Mom, I'll be back soon." Suye was sitting on the horse in front. Seeing Sulayun get on the carriage, he grabbed the horse's back and walked forward. He only sent Sulayun to the palace gate. After she entered, he turned around and went to Prince Jin's mansion. Entering the palace gate, an old nun walked up and said, "Miss Su. I don't know what to call grandma." Lian Xian stepped forward a few steps from behind and held out a silver nugget in her arms. The old mama stretched out her hand to take it, waited, and showed a bit of satisfaction on her face. "I am a second-class maid in the Queen Mother's palace. Miss Su just calls me Nanny." "Excuse me, Mama." Sulayun pursed her lips and smiled, following Nanny Ying to the Queen Mother's palace. Along the way, Sulayun seemed to have asked some questions intentionally or unintentionally, and he also got some things out of Nanny Ying's mouth. "Ms Su, we're here. In front is the Sinning Palace." Nanny Ying led Sulayun and others in. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the palace gate, he saw the Queen Mother walking towards him. Mammy Ying hurriedly took Sulayun to the side and saluted the Queen Mother. It was just that the Queen Mother was in a hurry and did not notice them at all. "What happened?" Mammy Ying grabbed a palace maid and asked. "Back to Mammy, Concubine Shu has had a miscarriage." Miscellaneous production. Mammy Ying was shocked. Ever since Concubine Shu became pregnant, all food and clothing expenses in the palace were according to the standards of the concubine, not to mention the protection of the fetus. "How come you still have a miscarriage?" Mammy Ying couldn't understand, but she also knew that the Queen Mother might not be able to care about Sulayun at this time. "Miss Su, please go to the side hall and wait for a while. It may take a while for the Queen Mother to come back." "Good." Sulayun lowered his eyes and entered the side hall. Since the 13th prince, no new life has been born in the palace for a long time. The Emperor and the Queen Mother attach great importance to the birth of Concubine Shu. In such a situation, if someone did it deliberately, he would be too brave. Sulayun didn't think about it anymore. This matter had little to do with her. Just after waiting for a whole morning, the Queen Mother never came back. "Miss Su." Suddenly, there was a sound from somewhere. Sulayun raised his eyes and saw that Lian Xian had walked to the window, opened it, and saw Ling Long standing outside the window. "Ling Long." Seeing the anxious expression on Ling Long's face, Sulayun frowned and stepped forward. "Why are you here?" "Miss Su, this is the imperial concubine. My servant knew that you were coming to the Queen Mother's palace today, so she came secretly. Do you know that the imperial concubine has had a miscarriage? Now this matter involves the imperial concubine. What exactly is going on? Tell me carefully what you know." Ling Long climbed into the side hall from the window and told Sulayun everything she knew without caring about others. It turns out that after Sulayun left yesterday, Concubine Shu came to Jade Palace again. But it was no different from usual. Concubine Shu often came to Yufu Hall, and she would have a few words with Concubine Qin from time to time. It's just that concubine Qin was not in the mood to greet concubine Shu yesterday because of Suleun's words. She only agreed with her a few words and asked concubine Shu to leave. Concubine Shu's temperament has always been that I will do whatever you don't let me do, especially since concubine Qin and she have been enemies for many years. Concubine Shu is naturally suspicious of such an attitude. So no matter what concubine Qin said, she refused to leave. Instead, she stayed in concubine Qin's room for a whole hour. If the imperial doctor hadn't told her to rest more, concubine Shu would have stayed there for a long time. Early this morning, Linglong woke up the 13th prince and was washing him when she heard a noise coming from outside, saying that concubine Shu had had a miscarriage. Although concubine Qin is not the queen, she is in charge of the 6th palace. If such a big thing happens, she will naturally rush there. Linglong sent the 13th prince to the Taifu to study. On the way back to the Yufu palace, he was stopped by a palace maid, saying that concubine Qin had been arrested. She hurried to concubine Shu's palace, but the guards around her prevented her from entering. I could only hear bits and pieces of things from others. Concubine Shu did not go out after she returned to the palace from Jade Palace yesterday. Unexpectedly, early this morning, the palace maid did not see concubine Shu getting up after waiting for a long time, so she hurried into the palace and saw concubine Shu lying in a pool of blood. After Linglong finished speaking, her face turned pale and she looked at Suleun uneasily. Miss Su, will something happen to the imperial concubine? There's no news yet, which means the matter hasn't been clarified yet. Suleun thought for a moment and looked at Quilau. Go out and take a look at the surrounding situation. Yes. Quilau walked out of the side hall in a hurry. After a while, Quilau ran back and said, Miss, there is no one outside. That's good, Linglong, I want to trouble you with something. At Suleun's signal, Linglong stepped forward and listened. Linglong glanced at Suleun nervously and said, Miss Su, please wait a moment. After a while, Linglong came in with a set of uniforms. Miss Su, do you really want to change into these clothes? As soon as Linglong finished asking, Suleun had already taken the clothes and started to put them on. Liangzin and Quilau looked at each other, and the former said, Miss, what are you doing? Don't worry, if anyone comes and asks, just say I went to the hut. Suleun changed his clothes, spread out his hair that he had done in the morning, and put it into a hat. After putting everything away, Suleun took a pack of silver needles from the medicine box and put it into his sleeve. Linglong, take me to Tai Hospital. I don't know if Dr. Wu is here. For such a big thing as concubine Shu's miscarriage, Imperial physician Wu might have gone to see concubine Shu. But Suleun still had to go and take a look first. After all, it was not very safe to go directly to concubine Shu. Liangzin and Quilau could only break into a cold sweat as they watched Suleun leave behind Linglong. We walked all the way to Taiyuan Hospital, but fortunately we didn't meet anyone on the way. Perhaps due to good luck, as soon as Suleun arrived at the entrance of Taiyuan Hospital, a person walked towards him. It is none other than Dr. Wu. Wu Yi. Linglong shouted. Dr. Wu raised his eyes and saw that it was her. He didn't say anything. He just glanced out of the corner of his eye and his eyes widened. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 272. Chapter 272 Stop the bleeding. Suleun nodded slightly and said in a very soft voice, Mr. Wu. How did you? Physician Wu caught a glimpse of his colleagues walking not far away, and hurriedly pulled Suleun and Linglong into a nearby hut. Ms. Su, why did you come to Taiyuan Hospital? Are you still dressed like this? Mr. Wu, have you ever been to concubine Shu? As soon as he heard Suleun's question, Imperial Dr. Wu understood, Miss Su, I'm about to go over to concubine Shu, but please don't get involved in this matter. Physician Wu had some friendship with the Sun family when he went to the Su family to treat Suleun. Because of this friendship, of course he is not willing to take risks with Suleun now. Wu Yi, please take me with you. Suleun met the eyes of Imperial Physician Wu, who was confused for a moment. Did Miss Su risk her life for concubine Qin? Physician Wu only hesitated for a moment. He thought about Suleun's medical skills and made some considerations. Perhaps Miss Su has some ideas. After a moment, Dr. Wu said, Miss Su, you can go with me, but you have to change your clothes. Physician Wu fetched another piece of men's clothing for Suleun to change into. You will be by my side in a moment and be my medicine boy. Don't act rashly in any situation. Yes. Suleun changed his clothes and said to Ling Long, you go back first. The 13th prince still needs you, so don't tell the 13th prince about this yet. I understand. Ling Long watched Wu Yi take Suleun out of Taiyuan Hospital, and then she hurried in the other direction. Walking towards concubine Shu's palace, there were gradually more and more people around. The guards were surrounding, patrolling. Suleun lowered his head and followed Dr. Wu into the hall quickly. The humble minister is incompetent, please be punished by your majesty. An imperial physician knelt in front of Emperor Jianwen, his face pale. Physician Wu looked at the situation around him, then stepped forward and said, I have seen the emperor, the queen mother. Suleun also knelt down. Not far away from her, concubine Qin was kneeling on the ground with an upright figure. Mr. Wu, please go in and check on concubine Shu. Emperor Jianwen spoke coldly, with such pressure that everyone did not even dare to breathe loudly. Physician Wu took the order and took Suleun into the house. Suleun could already smell the smell of blood when he was outside. As soon as he came in, the smell of blood was even stronger. She raised her eyes and saw concubine Shu lying on the bed. Her face was extremely pale, and she had obviously lost too much blood. Old Wu, this concubine's bleeding still can't be stopped, come and have a look. Seeing Dr. Wu come in, the people in the room hurriedly waved to him. Physician Wu stepped forward to diagnose concubine Shu's pulse. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Suleun took a quick look and found nothing unusual. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Dr. Wu, waiting for his diagnosis results. After a while, Dr. Wu let go of his hand with a serious look on his face. Have you had any injections? Of course I have used it, but it only lasts for a cup of tea, and I can't stop it. If the bleeding cannot be stopped, none of the subsequent methods will be useful. Physician Wu knew this, so he washed his hands and performed the acupuncture on concubine Shu again. Due to blood loss, concubine Shu is now in a coma. After a few injections, the bleeding gradually stopped. Just before everyone was happy, the blood that had been stopped began to flow out again. Although it was less than before, if it continued like this, not only would the child not be saved, but something would happen to concubine Shu as well. Yi Wu tightened his hands and looked at Suleun. Do you have any idea? The several imperial doctors on the side were stunned. Who was Imperial Physician Wu talking to? At first glance, they saw that it was someone they had not seen before, but the clothes he was wearing looked familiar. Old Wu, at this time, don't test your medicine boy, you can't do anything about it, can you expect him to do it? Physician Chen, who was relatively familiar with Dr. Wu, spoke. He also knew that his good friend would test the medicine boy from time to time, but at this time, there was no time to test the medicine boy. But Imperial Physician Chen was also surprised. He had seen all the medicine boys who often followed Physician Wu, but he had no impression of this one. But this medicine boy looks handsome, so he shouldn't forget it. I can try. Suleun met Royal Dr. Wu's eyes and knew that he had a reason for asking. Presumably no one in the room would reveal her situation. Physician Chen stared, female. At this time, just give it a try. Physician Wu did not bother to explain and ask Suleun to step forward to help. Old Wu. Physician Chen quickly reached out to stop him, but was stopped by Dr. Wu. Physician Wu hissed, "Don't argue. If something happens, I will bear the responsibility." At this time, Dr. Chen was even more surprised. This friend of his had always stayed away from trouble, so why did he take the initiative to take on the trouble today? But he had no time to think about this problem for the time being, and his eyes were fixed on Suleun's movements. Seeing her take out the silver needle from her sleeve, Dr. Chen was even more surprised. Could it be that she was a medical woman? If you are a medical woman, why do you need to dress like this? Can just anyone give concubine Shu acupuncture? Dr. Wu, please don't act out of emotion. An imperial physician spoke to persuade him. He was worried that something had gone wrong and his head was in danger. Suleun felt her pulse and thought about it. Have you given concubine Shu a ginseng piece in her mouth? Physician Wu glanced at Physician Chen, who said, 3 tablets have been given. Suleun nodded, heated the silver needle with a candle flame, and then raised his hand to pierce concubine Shu's middle position. This action shocked everyone present, but no one dared to say a word, let alone step forward to stop it. If there was a slight deviation, it would be over. Suleun's hand was very steady, holding the silver needle and inserting it into the flesh. When she released it, she flicked the exposed part and saw that the silver needle began to shake, and then she continued to apply the acupuncture. 10 injections were given in succession, and the effect was seen. The bleeding was stopped again. Everyone stared closely, and Imperial Physician Wu and Imperial Physician Chen noticed that the 11 silver needles were still shaking with no intention of stopping. Mr. Wu, the bleeding has stopped. You should be more skillful than me in what happens next. Suleun stepped aside and allowed Dr. Wu to continue. Physician Wu was still a little worried and wanted to wait and see. Suleun saw what he was thinking. Time waits for no one. You just check the pulse. If you delay it any longer, the child will not be saved at all. Physician Wu knew that Suleun was right, so he had no choice but to grit his teeth and take over the matter together with Physician Chen. After a stick of incense passed, Dr. Wu wiped his sweat and slowly exhaled. The child was saved. Suleun stepped forward, slowly pinched the silver needle in the middle of the body, and pulled it out. At the moment when the silver needle was pulled out, the remaining 10 silver needles stopped shaking. Physician Chen's eyes became more astonished. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 273. Chapter 273 There is evidence. Such a set of acupuncture techniques would be impossible to come up with without studying for a long time. But the girl in front of me is not very old and looks to be no more than 20 years old. How could she know such a sophisticated acupuncture technique? Unless she has a very powerful master. Physician Chen secretly sighed, these days, people are really irritating. You must know that in order to study medical skills, he worked as a medicine boy for many doctors, which lasted as long as 10.5 months, and as long as 3 years. When he was nearly 40, he finally entered Thai hospital. This girl met a teacher when she was young. However, Imperial Physician Chen was also confused. Although he knew all the doctors in the capital, he had heard about all the great doctors. He had never heard of any of them finding a girl as his apprentice. Suleun put away the silver needle and stepped aside. This move was also understood by the people in the room. So after leaving the house, no one mentioned Suleun, only saying that it was the contribution of Dr. Wu. Concubine Shu and the child in her belly were saved. Emperor Jianwen's expression softened a lot. Can we find out what caused it? Imperial Physician Wu and Imperial Physician Chen, you look at me and I look at you. It is Imperial Physician Wu who stepped forward and replied, Your Majesty, from the current situation, it seems that no possibility can be ruled out. We have to wait for Wei Chen. Only after careful inspection with colleagues can we confirm it. I will give you 2 days to find out this matter as soon as possible. Emperor Jianwen's eyes passed over Qin Gaifei, and then he stood up and walked out. Eunuch Wan also hurriedly followed. After Emperor Jianwen left, the Queen Mother slowly stood up and looked at concubine Qin. You should get up first too. The Queen Mother. The Ijia knows your temperament, but you cannot escape responsibility for this matter. You should pay more attention to it in the past 2 days. Concubine Qin nodded, I understand. Watching the Queen Mother leave, concubine Qin stepped forward with a calm face and said, Dr. Wu, where do you think we should start? Let's start with concubine Shu's food. Physician Wu returned. Concubine Qin looked at the palace maids and eunuchs around her and ordered in a cold voice, check carefully everything concubine Shu has eaten and come into contact with in the past few days. Yes. The Queen Mother returned to the palace and sat down with a sad face. It seems that this incident happened early in the morning. The Queen Mother stretched out her hand tiredly and rubbed her forehead. Mammy Yu led the palace maids to bring the lunch in. Seeing the Queen Mother's movements, she hurried forward and said, Master, what's wrong with you? I'll call the imperial doctor. No. The Queen Mother put down her hand and stopped Mammy Yu. She stood up, walked to the table, sat down and planned to eat. But as soon as he picked up the chopsticks, he thought of something, paused in his movements, and looked at Nanny Ying who was standing not far away. Is Sulayun here? Back to the Queen Mother, my servant left the palace early in the morning and went to the Sun Mansion to fetch Miss Su. Now Miss Su is in the side hall. Mammy Ying stepped forward and returned. The Queen Mother looked at the dishes on the table and asked, can someone bring food to you? Has been sent. That's good. In the side hall, Sulayun had changed his clothes and sat at the table to eat. Miss, have you not been discovered today? Liang Xin and Kuliao couldn't follow Sulayun and didn't know her situation with concubine Shu. They just saw Sulayun come back safely and were somewhat relieved. Sulayun shook his head, everyone is worried about concubine Shu, so naturally no one notices me. Miss, can you see what's the problem? Kuliao couldn't help but ask. She is very curious, especially when she encounters something like this by chance. They all say that the grudges in the palace are the most terrifying. Now that I see them, they are absolutely right. First, the 13th prince almost suffocated, and now concubine Shu has a miscarriage. These events are much more lively than other places. Lian Xian tugged at Kuliao disapprovingly and said, Kuliao, this is in the Queen Mother's palace. After saying that, she walked to the door and took a look. Fortunately, no one was around. Sulayun also knew this very well, the Queen Mother has just returned to the palace. I'm afraid it will take a while before she calls me over. You have been standing for a long time, so sit down and rest first. The slaves are not tired. Liang Xin and Kuliao shook their hands and answered. This is in the palace, they can't embarrass the lady. This wait, again, takes a while. Mammy Ying knocked on the door, Miss Su. Ying Mammy. Lian Xian stepped forward and opened the door. Grandma Ying saw Sulayun sitting on a chair with an upright figure, and she couldn't help but admire Sulayun. After waiting for 3 hours, Sulayun could still be so steady, which was better than many noble ladies. The Queen Mother asked the servant to take Miss Su over. Good. Sulayun stood up. Naturally, Lian Xian and Kui Lu could not follow him, so they had to wait in the side hall. Following Nanny Ying, Sulayun walked into the Queen Mother's palace with her head lowered. The incense was still burning, and the smell was the same as what she smelled at concubine Qin's place yesterday. Sulayun's eyes flashed, but he didn't have time to think too much. She knelt down and said, Public girl Sulayun sends her greetings to the Queen Mother. May the Queen Mother be blessed with peace and prosperity. Get up. The Queen Mother's gentle voice sounded, but it was still a little hoarse. She must be still worried about concubine Shu's side of things. Sulayun did not move, but instead lowered his head. What the daughter of the people is going to say is really treasonous. The women of the people do not dare to stand up. Please allow the Queen Mother to allow the women of the people to kneel down. In that case, Ijia would like to hear what you want to say. Yes. Sulayun took a deep breath and slowly told what happened between her and Suwanur. The surrounding palace maids and eunuchs lowered their heads and heard these words clearly. Aunt Yu and Aunt Ying looked strange, as if they didn't expect that Sulayun asked for grace for such a thing. People's daughters don't dare to ask for anything, they just want a proof for their mother and themselves. Hearing what Sulayun said about his mother, the Queen Mother was moved. Since the AI family promised you, they will naturally do it. But what you say now is just one-sided words and it is difficult to believe it. Do you have any evidence? There are women of the people. Sulayun's words were resounding. She took out 2 letters from her arms and handed them over. Mammy Yu took it and checked it carefully before opening it for the Queen Mother to check. Perhaps due to good luck, Sulayun did not give up looking for evidence to prove his identity after Wenpo's accident. There was news just before the Spring Festival. These 2 letters, one was written by Mrs. when Sun Gro gave birth, and the other was a signed testimony signed by the Li family. When delivering the baby, Po Wen naturally noticed the birthmark on Sulayun's body. This birthmark was unique, and Po Wen remembered it clearly. But when she washed her hands and looked again, she found that the birthmark was gone. At that time Po Wen did not dare to say anything. She searched secretly in private but did not find any babies with birthmarks, so she had no choice but to give up. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 274. Chapter 274 A gift from a friend. But this incident was remembered by Wenpo. She did not dare to tell others, so she could only write it down secretly. Over the years, Po Wen would pay attention to the situation of the Su family from time to time, so when Sulayun returned to Beijing, Po Wen had a premonition in her heart. She gave the letter to her daughter for safekeeping. Later, Su Ye went to find Wenpo, but Su Wainer beat him to it, and Wenpo died as a result. The letter remained, and even Wenpo's daughter didn't know what was written in it. As for the other letter, Sulayun's eyes were a little darker. She had always kept the testimony of the Li family and his wife by her side. But if she were to reveal it, it would be just another gossip. The Queen Mother read both letters, and her eyes fell on Sulayun with a little more pity. You child, you have suffered a lot. The testimony of the Li family and his wife also wrote a lot about how they treated Sulayun in the past. As the Queen Mother gets older, she becomes more susceptible to such things. Coupled with some other reasons, a bit of anger also emerged in my heart. Ijia will make the decision for you in this matter. Thank you, Queen Mother. Sulayun is grateful to be back. Even if the Queen Mother doesn't help, she still has another way, but if she does it any other way, people will be criticized to some extent. It would be different if the Queen Mother took action. But the AI family has a problem. How did you learn double-sided embroidery after staying in Jingzhou for so many years? The Queen Mother stared at Sulayun with probing eyes. Sulayun was not panicked. No one would know about her rebirth if she didn't tell her. She looked calm and said respectfully, a civilian girl dare not lie. After returning home, a civilian girl wanted to show some filial piety to her mother, and unexpectedly discovered that she seemed to have some talent in embroidery. The capital is so big that a civilian girl has never seen it before. It was only after she came back that the common girl discovered that the noble girls next to her all had a skill, so they tried to use it, but the common girl didn't even know how to read. After discovering this talent, she practiced hard and worked hard, and she finally learned a skill. Her tone was very calm, but in the ears of the Queen Mother, it sounded a bit sad. The Queen Mother's heart became softer and gentler, and she waved to Suleun, "Come forward." "Yes." Suleun walked forward slowly and stopped when he was a few steps away from the Queen Mother. "And you, do you think she looks a little like someone?" The Queen Mother was slightly startled and asked Nanny Yu, who was standing beside her. Mammy Yu looked at Suleun, and then said with a smile, "Master, this Miss Su naturally looks like her mother. She does look like Gro, but she looks more like her grandmother to me." Judging from the Queen Mother's tone, she seemed to be very familiar with her grandmother. Suleun was thinking in his heart without showing it on his face. She doesn't know much about her grandmother. When the master said this, the slave also thought it was true. Umami suddenly realized. Probably my grandmother had some connection with the Queen Mother, and the Queen Mother's attitude towards Suleun became more and more friendly. After talking for a while, the Queen Mother sent Suleun off. "Queen Mother, actually, I have to go to Concubine Chin today, so I don't need to bother Mammy Ying." Suleun pretended not to know what happened today and naturally mentioned Concubine Chin. The Queen Mother's face changed slightly, but she remained patient. "Something unexpected happened today. Concubine Chin may not be able to greet you, so you should go back first. In this case, the daughter of the people will leave first." Mammy Ying sent Suleun out of the palace all the way. She saw Suleun getting on the carriage and then left. The carriage did not move. After waiting for a while, Lian Xian opened the curtain and said, "Miss, this is Mr. Wei Yat." "Master Wei." Suleun looked at the man standing outside the car and nodded lightly. She handed over the brocade bag in her hand and said, "I think your Majesty will not be free these days, so please give this to her. In addition, I would like to remind your Majesty that you can check out the new aromatherapy used in her palace. There is some relationship." Wei Ya accepted the brocade bag and said, "Sorry to trouble you, Miss Su." It was Dr. Wu who reminded him to come to Suleun, so he was not curious about why Suleun knew about Concubine Shu. After saying that, he turned around and walked back to the palace. A carriage drove up not far away, and sitting on the tall horse was Sidu Xiu. Sidu Dankai opened the curtain and jumped down, still dressed in men's clothes. "Leun." Seeing Suleun behind the car curtain, Sidu Dankai stepped forward, first glanced at Wei Ya's back, and then looked away. "Princess Sidu." Suleun sat in the carriage and could only bless himself and treat him as a salute. Sidu Dankai waved his hand and said, "Don't be so polite. By the way, I'm about to enter the palace. I'll find you in a few days." Before Suleun could ask Sidu Dankai why he came to find him, the person in front of him had already run away. Strictly speaking, she and Sidu Dankai had not exchanged a few words. Why did Sidu Dankai suddenly become close to her? He was confused, but Suleun didn't delve into it. "Originally, I thought I would be busy in the Jade Fu Hall for a few days, but when I met with Concubine Shu, I didn't have to be busy for the time being." Suleun was not idle either. He brought gifts and headed to Zhao's house the next day. Zhao Minjian knew she was coming and had been prepared early in the morning. The two of them were sitting in the pavilion, admiring the surrounding scenery. "You two, you're here as soon as you come, what else do you want to give me as a gift?" Zhao Minjian said this, but when she saw the gift, her eyes lit up. "There is a dagger in the brocade box. There is also an emerald inlaid at the tail." Zhao Minjian took out the dagger and gestured up and down. The blade was sharp, and when she swung it out, she could still hear the sound of breaking wind. "This dagger is quite good. As long as Sister Minjian likes it." Suleun saw that Zhao Minjian couldn't put it down and knew that he had chosen the right gift. Although she didn't have much contact with Zhao Minjian, she had heard a lot about Zhao Minjian's deeds in her previous life, and she could guess what Zhao Minjian liked. "So I chose such a dagger myself." Sulayun looked up. When Zhao Minjian waved the dagger, her sleeves fell down, and she could see the red coral bracelet on her wrist. She thought of the last time she saw Su Chu and Kui'er. In those few days, she carefully recalled all the events in her previous life, to some extent. The scholar who fell in love with Zhao Minjian seems to be a sick man and should not have participated in this spring festival. Sister Leun. Zhao Minjian finished playing with the dagger and put it away. When she looked back, she saw Sulayun was in a daze, so she shouted. Sulayun came back to his senses and said, "I think the chain on my sister's hand is a bit special. I wonder where you bought it from." "This bracelet." Zhao Minjian stretched out her hand and touched the bracelet subconsciously, with a smile appearing on the corner of her mouth. Even to an uninformed person, you can feel some love. It was a gift from a friend. It is probably impossible to buy it in the capital. That's a pity, I was thinking of buying a bunch too. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 275. Chapter 275, Feeling like old friends at first sight. Sulayun looked away regretfully, as if he really liked this bracelet. Seeing her expression like this, Zhao Minjian lowered her head and looked at the daggers on the table, feeling a little sorry, so she said, "If Sister Leun likes it, I'll ask someone to look for it, and maybe I can buy a bunch. This is too much trouble." Sulayun smiled and refused, but Zhao Minjian didn't want her to be disappointed and said she would look for it. If this bracelet is indeed unique, if Zhao Minjian wants to find another one, she should still go to the scholar, and then she will know who the other person is. It wasn't that Su Li wanted to test her secretly, so she just asked directly. Firstly, Zhao Minjian wouldn't tell her, and secondly, it would only arouse suspicion. That's why she came up with this idea. Sulayun apologized silently in her heart. She didn't want to see anything happen to Zhao Minjian. You must know that in the previous life, it was not until Zhao Minjian jumped to her death that the Zhao family knew that she had fallen in love with a scholar. Obviously, Zhao Minjian hid the other party's secret very well. But Sulayun was also curious about how good the scholar was that could make a girl like Zhao Minjian willing to die for him. "Sister Leun, you said before that Yu Hualin Khan would die, but now that we have all returned to Beijing, he is fine too." Zhao Minjian thought about this and spoke subconsciously. Sulayun also had confusion in his heart, but his expression remained unchanged and he just said hesitantly, "Maybe I made a mistake." After staring at Sulayun for a while, Zhao Minjian looked away. She could never forget Sulayun's determined expression that day. She felt that what Sulayun said was true. But now nothing happened, so she mentioned it casually. Sulayun chuckled and changed the subject. "Sister Minjian, have you been out for a walk in the past few days since you came back? I think the weather has been nice recently, how about we go for a walk tomorrow?" "Okay, I'm worried that no one is with me." Zhao Minjian could see what Sulayun was thinking, so she didn't ask any more about the matter and continued along with Sulayun's topic. On the next day, the two of us who had agreed to go on a trip turned into three. "Sister Leun, who is he?" Zhao Minjian looked Sidu Dankai up and down. "Man. I haven't seen you for a while. Why is there a man next to Sister Leun?" "Sister, this is Sidu Dankai, the daughter of King Pingzi." Sulayun reluctantly made the introduction. Sidu Dankai arrived at the Sun Mansion early this morning. When she came out, the other party knew that she was going out today, so he followed her. Zhao Minjian was stunned. She had been there for the Queen Mother's birthday, so she naturally knew who Sidu Dankai was. "How come you are a man? This Miss Zhao doesn't mind if I come with you, right?" Sidu Dankai spoke, and now Zhao Minjian understood that the other party was indeed a girl, but she was wearing men's clothes for some reason. The daughter of King Pingzi, Zhao Minjian would not refuse even if she was unwilling. Not to mention, She was now a little curious about Sidhu Dankai. The girl's family is wandering outside, usually going to a jewelry store. However, Sulayun and the other three were different from ordinary girls. Together, the three of them chose a tea house to sit down and plan to listen to a book. On the stage, the storyteller hit the castanets and spoke loudly. It is exactly the story of Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai. The storyteller is experienced, and when he talks about something crucial, he will always listen for a moment and observe the reactions of the people in the audience. Na Yingtai jumped down in front of Shanbo's grave and committed suicide. The pair met underground from then on. After finishing the story, the storyteller stood up, bowed his hands to the people in the audience, and then got off the stage with the teacup in hand. In the audience, Sulayun took a sip of tea and glanced at Zhao Minjian. The latter's face was deep, as if he felt something. This story is too loose. Sidhu Dankai sneered. This was the first time she heard the story, but it didn't feel strange at all. She has been wearing men's clothes for so many years, so she can scare people at first. When she starts talking, everyone will know that she is a girl. Even if Zhu Yingtai's voice sounds like a man's, it's impossible to hide the Adam's apple all the time. Zhao Minjian was distracted at first, but when she heard this, her eyes subconsciously fell on Sidhu Dankai's neck. There is naturally no Adam's apple in the girl's family, and Sidhu Dankai obviously does not have it. Speaking of which, I have always wanted to ask, why does Miss Sidhu wear men's clothes? Zhao Minjian couldn't help being curious and asked. Sidhu Dankai said in a brisk tone, just call me by my name. As for why I wear men's clothes, don't you think men's clothes are better? Girls' clothes are very cumbersome and they have to hold themselves upright. I really can't stand it. Indeed, I wore too much armor in the military camp, and I really feel constrained when I wear these clothes again. Zhao Minjian's eyes lit up and she agreed. Hearing what she said, Sidhu Dankai was a little surprised. Have you ever stayed in a military camp? I thought the girls in your capital were the ones who sat in the room, learning music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I'm impatient to learn those things. Instead, I prefer to wield swords and guns. I have fought in many wars. As soon as the two started chatting, they felt more like old friends at first sight, and they chatted very enthusiastically. Sulayun didn't feel bored either. He held his cheek and listened to the two of them talking, which was quite interesting. Seeing that Sidhu Dankai and Zhao Minjian were getting closer and closer as they talked, a slightly artificial voice came over. Sister Yunur. Sulayun turned around and saw Lu Shuiying. She was surrounded by Lu Huayuan and several young ladies, making it look like a party. Sulayun looked around for a week and didn't see Lu Shuiya, so he lost interest in chatting and said lightly, Cousin Shuiying. Sister Yunur, you see we are so destined, why not come together? We are going to the lake to attend a poetry festival. Lu Shuiying seemed not to notice Sulayun's alienation at all, and stepped forward to pull her. We won't go. Go, there will be more people and more excitement. Lu Shuiying's eyes flashed across Sidhu Dankai's body. I don't know whose young master this is, why don't you come too? Sulayun was still about to refuse, then Sidhu Dankai said, okay. Are you a woman? Lu Shuiying was startled. She thought Sulayun had hooked up with another man, but she didn't expect that it was a girl pretending to be a man. Sidhu Dankai chuckled and said, is it possible that since I'm a woman, I can't participate? No, no, it's okay if you want to come. Lu Shuiying looked at Sulayun again. Sister Yunur, just go with us. Since Sidhu Dankai is interested, Sulayun and Zhao Minjian will naturally accompany him. The three of them followed Lu Shuiying and her group and walked towards the location of the poetry meeting by the lake. There is a cruise ship parked by the lake. It looks simple from the outside. But once you step inside, you will find a different world. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 276. Chapter 276 Poetry Party on a Boat Cruise. The cruise ship has 2 floors, with several more private rooms arranged above. The bottom is completely open, and those sitting around can see each other facing each other. There were already some people inside, men and women, sitting on both sides. Looking at it at once, it doesn't look like a poetry gathering, but more like a banquet to celebrate marriage. As soon as Lu Huayuan appeared, many people gathered around him. He has also achieved great results in this spring period. In addition, his father Lu Hong is now the censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate and has won the favor of the emperor. Naturally, there are many people who please him. Brother Huayuan, you're here, I'm waiting for you, sit down quickly. Everyone left the chair to Lu Huayuan. Obviously, this poetry meeting was headed by Lu Huayuan. Lu Shuiying is Lu Huayuan's biological sister, so her treatment will naturally not be bad. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Lu Shuiying sat down on her own and didn't care about Sulayun and the others. Sidu Dankai raised the corners of his mouth slightly and sneered. She is not a fool, Lu Shuiying is clearly trying to make them look bad. Looking around, luckily, there are only 3 spots left. One of the positions is vacant on the man's side. Sidu Dankai was not shy at all and took a few steps to sit on the empty seat. Sulayun and Zhao Minjian saw her move and sat on the other 2 empty seats. It happens to be on the opposite side as well. Many people noticed this scene. After all, Sulayun and the others came in behind Lu Shuiying and others. They should have been brought by Lu Shuiying and others. Now there is no one to say hello, which really makes people suspicious. After Sidu Dankai sat down, Lu Shuiying seemed to think of them, her face turned red, and she said apologetically, I'm sorry, but I forgot. Girl, why don't you sit over here? Girl. The young master sitting next to Sidu Dankai looked sideways and saw something was wrong. No need, I think this location is quite good. Sidu Dankai raised his eyebrows and smiled, and the energy of a child of the prairie emerged spontaneously. The raised eyebrows attracted the attention of many men and women present. Lu Shuiying realized that she was afraid that it would be another bad idea to bring Sulayun and the others here today. It's just that everyone is already here, so she can't invite them out again, so she can only smile, look at Lu Huayuan, and ask him to start the poetry meeting quickly. Lu Huayuan received Lu Shuiying's signal, stood up, and said loudly, everyone, since everyone has arrived, let's start the poetry meeting. Everyone agreed. Today's poetry meeting is to beat the drums and pass the flowers. When the drums stop, the person who got the flowers has to get up and compose a poem. If he can't compose it, he will be punished with a drink. To make it more difficult, Lu Huayuan also clicked on the word, which must be included in the poems written by the person holding the flowers. Drums sounded and flowers were passed around. After a few rounds, the atmosphere became lively. Perhaps she was lucky. After several passes, Sulayun didn't hit the target once. She was also happy to relax and sit in her seat to rest. During the dinner, Lu Shuiying quietly left for a while and came back quickly. Not many people noticed this little gesture, but Sidu Dankai did. She raised her eyebrows and shifted her gaze to the drummer. Lu Shuiying just went over to say a few words to the other party. Sulayun was a little tired from sitting and moved her feet. Unexpectedly, Zhao Minjian happened to hand over the flowers. As soon as she reached out to take them, the drumming stopped. She was the one who got hit. Sister Yunur, you got it? Lu Shuiying's happy look was as if she had received it. Sulayun didn't think much about it at first. After all, it was possible that it would be her turn to pass the flowers on drums, but Lu Shuiying looked like she knew she would get it. So before she could speak, Lu Shuiying was even more anxious than she was. Sister Yunur, if you don't know how, Shuiying can help you. At this moment, even Sulayun had to think about it. She gave Lu Shuiying a strange look, and the successful look in his eyes had not completely dissipated. Sulayun suddenly felt bored. If she had been in her previous life, these little calculations might have made her depressed for a long time. But now it's different. She stood up with the flowers, opened her lips and said, if the swallows don't return, spring will be late, and the apricot blossoms will be cold in the mist and rain. Quoted from Dai Shulun's Suxi Pavilion. I thought I would see Sulayun's joke, but I didn't expect Sulayun to answer it. Lu Shuiying's face darkened, but she still didn't give up. Sister Yunur said so well, let's continue. She winked at the drummer. The next two passes fell into Sulayun's hands. Even others may find it a bit strange. How can it be such a coincidence every time? Sulayun did not panic and answered fluently. Every verse is irresistible. When the flower was about to fall into Sulayun's hands for the fourth time, Sulayun did not reach out to pick it up. She looked at the drummer with a faint smile. The other party didn't expect that she would look over, so he panicked and stopped moving his hands. The drumsticks fell to the ground, and the sound of the drum suddenly stopped. Everyone realized that it was probably someone who did this on purpose. Lu Huayuan glanced at Lu Shuiying and knew that it was his sister's attention, so he stood up and smoothed things over. We have been playing for a long time. I think everyone is tired, so why not watch the performance first? What's so interesting about the performance? I'm curious, how did this young man manage to choose Miss Su from all of them? Sidhu Dankai stood up suddenly and walked to the drummer. She bent down, reached out to the drummer, and took out a money bag. The pattern on the money bag doesn't look like it's for a man. Seeing the money bag being held in Sidhu Dankai's hand, Lu Shuiying's face turned pale and she unconsciously clenched her hands. Just now, she was afraid that she would be noticed by others if she delayed too long, so she gave the money bag to the other party directly. Little did she expect that the scene would actually be seen by others. Brother, could this purse be given to you by your sweetheart? Sidhu Dankai joked, but looked straight at Lu Shuiying. The implication is self-evident. Girl, it's not a gentleman's conduct to talk about other people's private matters. Please don't talk anymore. Lu Huayuan frowned. His fair face and gentle tone attracted the attention of many girls. Sidhu Dankai sneered and said, I am not a gentleman. What I believe in is to take revenge when I have a grudge, otherwise I will not feel comfortable. She threw the money bag in the middle with great momentum. Everyone was frightened by her posture and didn't know how to react. Sulayun naturally did not avoid Sidhu Dankai's explanation. She stood up and said to Lu Shuiying and Lu Huayuan, if this money bag wasn't given by the drummer's friend, I think he stole it. The little ones don't dare. Once he heard this, the drummer didn't dare to remain silent any longer. Forget about being acquaintances, this theft is not a trivial matter. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 277. Chapter 277 The Assassination of King An. Once the theft is confirmed, his life may not be guaranteed. The drummer fell to his knees on the ground, his legs trembling, and he hurriedly went to see Lu Shuiying. Sister Yunur, don't say such nonsense. Lu Shuiying noticed his actions, glared at him fiercely, and spoke quickly. Whether it was stolen or not, you'll know just by checking. Sidhu Dankai coughed lightly and saw Wei 11 walking in from the outside with a solemn expression. Miss, what are your orders? Check carefully, but someone has lost his money bag. Yes. Just when Wei 11 was about to take action, Lu Huayuan's face darkened and he said, Girl, there are so many people here, wouldn't it be bad if you asked your servants to search them? What you said makes sense. Sidhu Dankai pretended to misunderstand Lu Huiwen's words and casually nodded at a few servants nearby. This way you are no longer just my subordinates. What do you think, Mr. Lu? You. Lu Huiyuan had never met such an unreasonable person before, and he was speechless. After waiting for a while, seeing that Wei 11 was about to take action, Lu Huiyuan looked at Su Leun and said, "Cousin Leun, please advise this friend of yours. Making trouble like this is a joke. My cousin is joking. This friend of mine is also kind-hearted. He is worried that someone has lost his money bag at the banquet, so he asks someone to search it. How can it be a trouble? If you don't want others to check, why don't you trouble yourself? Check to make sure the purse is not missing." Su Leun's tone was calm and his words were more convincing. After all, no one else but Sidhu Dankai saw Lu Shuiying's movements. When they saw the money bag, everyone would naturally think too much. There is not much money in a purse, but it is not pleasant to have someone steal it. Therefore, everyone lowered their heads and checked, "Mine is still there. I am also here." No one's money bag was missing. Su Leun looked at Lu Shuiying and Lu Huiyuan. They were the only two people who had not yet checked. Lu Huiyuan looked gloomy, and he did not expect that Su Leun's few words would lead to a worse situation. Of course he could see that Lu Shuiying was probably doing this to target Su Leun. He even recognized the money bag early on. It belonged to Lu Shuiying. Cousin, where is your wallet?" Su Leun asked, pretending to be worried. Seeing that there was no movement between the two people for a long time, everyone became a little anxious. "Mr. Lu, I remember you brought it with you. It would be better to check it." "Yeah, it won't take a while anyway." Under the shouts of everyone, Lu Huiyuan could only lower his head and check. Naturally, his wallet was there. At the moment, Lu Shuiying is the only one left. Lu Huiyuan caught a glimpse of Lu Shuiying's expression and knew that she might not be able to say even a single word. The money bag matter was big or small, but it was not a good thing for a girl. If it was really confirmed that the money bag belonged to Lu Shuiying, wouldn't it mean that Lu Shuiying had a relationship with this drumming guy? When the time comes, I won't be able to explain it clearly, and my innocence will be tarnished. Shuiying went out in a hurry in the morning and didn't bring her purse. She even told me about this, saying that she could only use my money today. Lu Huiyuan's lips curved into a smile, and he explained to Lu Shuiying in a relaxed tone. When Lu Shuiying heard this, her stiff expression relaxed a little. "Yes, I told my brother this morning." "Then this purse does belong to this little brother. I didn't expect you to have such a hobby. Actually, if we really need to investigate this matter, we won't be able to find out clearly no matter what. It's just a money bag, and it can be tampered with in any way." Sidhu Dankai knew this very well. She just saw that scene and found it interesting for a moment. She wanted to tease Lu Shuiying. But now she saw the joke and felt that it was just like this, and she suddenly lost interest. Wei 11 picked up the money bag and handed it back to the drummer as instructed by Sidhu Dankai. The little brother dared to take it, but in full view of the public, he couldn't refuse, so he could only put the money bag away cautiously. "It's boring, Wei 11, let's go." Sidhu Dankai curled his lips, muttered, turned around and walked out. Su Leun and Zhao Minjian originally came together because they saw Sidhu Dankai coming. Since Sidhu Dankai was leaving, they naturally wouldn't stay. But as soon as they reached the bow of the boat, Su Leun and Wei 11's expressions froze and they suddenly looked towards the water. I saw bubbles suddenly floating on the surface of the water, and in the blink of an eye, several men in black emerged from the water. The target of the men in black was not their ship, but another ship on the water not far away. 4 or 5 men in black rushed straight into the boat. Screams suddenly sounded. Hearing the sound, Lu Huiyuan and others quickly came out of the boat and saw a fight on another boat. Everyone screamed and hurried to the shore for fear of being affected. "Leun, you go to the shore first." Zhao Minjian pulled Sulayun and said, "I'll go over and take a look." "Be careful." Sulayun only had time to say something, before he saw Zhao Minjian rising into the air and landing on another ship. Wei 11 escorted Sidhu Dankai and Sulayun ashore. Several guards were beaten out of the boat, with blood still spitting out of their mouths. Faintly, Sulayun heard an exclamation. It seems to be saying, "Protect the prince." After a while, King An was surrounded by his men and ran out of the boat in embarrassment. The people in black were hot on their heels and followed him out. Seeing King An, Sulayun reacted. Isn't this what happened when King An was in trouble? Unexpectedly, she was bumped into. "Hurry, kill them all for me." Even though he was scared to death, King An still shouted angrily, and there were only 4 or 5 of his men surrounding him. The boat that King An was in was some distance from the shore. If he wanted to get to the shore, he had to jump into the water and swim across. How could the guards protect King An in the water? Zhao Minjian fought with a man in black and was beaten out of the boat. Looking at their movements, they seemed to be on par. The man in black had a clear goal and headed straight for King An. That posture seemed to kill King An on the spot. The guards of King An rushed forward to confront the enemy, but there was no match for the man in black. In a short time, they were all dead and wounded, leaving only King An standing on the bow of the boat. One of the men in black flashed his eyes and quickly stepped forward to catch King An. At this moment, a figure jumped out. Wang An felt his eyes turn red and blood spurt out. He thought he had been injured. He was so frightened that his feet went weak. He couldn't even scream and fell to the ground. But King An soon realized that he was not the one who was injured. "It's the man in black." The man in black covered his hand where the veins had been severed, and blood was pouring out. "Withdraw." Seeing that something happened to the leader, the remaining men in black looked at each other, stepped forward, pulled the leader, and flew away. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 278. Chapter 278 Gu Yuanbei's complaint. The man in black moved quickly. He had probably stepped on it a long time ago. In a short time, he disappeared into the crowd. "Your Majesty, we have already sent someone to chase you." Lai Yufeng stepped forward to report. Xiao Shenjiao nodded slightly and looked at King An, who was still lying limply on the ground. "Can the 6th brother still get up?" Wang An's voice trembled, and he was helped up by his men. Zhao Minjian walked to Xiao Shenjiao and said, "His Royal Highness, King Jin. I just troubled Miss Zhao." "It's not troublesome, it's just that those men in black are really brave to do something to the prince in public." Zhao Minjian pursed her lips and looked a little solemn. Having trouble with the prince is no small matter. Moreover, if Xiao Shenjiao hadn't taken action in time, King An's life might have been lost. "Third brother, thank you very much for today." Wang An's feet were trembling, but he did not forget to thank Xiao Shenjiao. Soon, the ship docked at the shore, and King An was put into a carriage by his men and returned to the palace first. Sulayun stepped forward and took Zhao Minjian's arm. He saw that the clothes on her forearm had been cut by a knife, and blood was pouring out of the wound. "It's just a minor injury, don't worry." Zhao Minjian comforted her. She suffered much more serious injuries on the battlefield than she does now. "What if it's poisonous?" Sulayun said in a serious tone. "It's better to go to the medical clinic first." "No way." Zhao Minjian was stunned. She didn't feel anything, so she shouldn't have been poisoned. But seeing Sulayun's worried expression, he agreed. "Your Highness, let's go first." Zhao Minjian was respectful to Xiao Shenjiao. Xiao Shenjiao nodded. "Miss Zhao's injury is more important." "Dankai, do you want to leave?" Zhao Minjian glanced at Sidhu Dankai, who waved his hand and said, "You go ahead. I have something to do, so I won't be with you." Seeing this, Sulayun and Zhao Minjian looked at each other, turned around and left without thinking much. Just the voice of Sidhu Dankai came from behind. Xiao Shenjiao, you are really good at it. No wonder you can beat that Yu Hualin. The farther you go, the less you can hear the sound clearly. Accompanied Zhao Minjian to the hospital to bandage the wound. The wound was indeed not poisonous, but a little deep. Do not touch the water or use force in these days to avoid the wound from opening. After bandaging it, the doctor gave instructions. Zhao Minjian responded repeatedly and left the hospital with Sulayun. I don't know who those men in black are, but they actually assassinated the prince. Listening to Zhao Minjian's muttering, Sulayun narrowed his eyes and said, Prince An and the others should be able to investigate this matter. That too. I'll send my sister back first. Zhao Minjian looked at the blood stains on her body and knew that it was not good to walk around outside like this, so she did not reject Sulayun's proposal. After sending Zhao Minjian to the Zhao mansion, Sulayun left. Qilayu and Lian Xian were still frightened. They did not expect to encounter such a thing. But seeing Sulayun's serious expression, the two of them did not dare to say anything. The palace of the Prince of Jin. Your Majesty, my subordinates are incompetent and have lost track of them. The guard knelt in front of Xiao Shenjiao and apologized. Lu Feng's eyes flashed with surprise. There were not many people who could be ignored. The martial arts of those men in black are not very high, but their anti-reconnaissance capabilities are not weak. Go and receive the punishment yourself. Xiao Shenjiao spoke calmly, opened the lid of the tea, and took a sip. Yes. And Yi did not dare to hesitate and retreated. Lai Yufeng noticed Xiao Shenjiao's expression and said, Master, do you want people from Yuelo to investigate this matter? No need, those are the 11 people. 11 clan. Lai Yufeng was startled, very surprised. Isn't the master's biological mother a member of the 11 tribe? This is obviously no coincidence. Since the queen passed away many years ago, the 11 people have disappeared and reappeared many years later. It is not a small matter. What's more, those few people dared to assassinate King An today. It's just that he couldn't understand why the 11 people wanted to secure their king. Old Xiao. Gu Yuanbei's loud voice sounded in Prince Jin's mansion. Then, people broke in. By Mr. Gu. Lu Feng bowed and then left. Gu Yuanbei stepped forward and slapped Xiao Shenjiao on the shoulder. Today you have to have a good drink with me. I even called Su Ye. Did you quarrel with Mr. Gu again? Xiao Shenjiao stood up and walked to the table. Obviously, he is very familiar with this situation. As soon as Gu Yuanbei heard the word Master Gu, he snorted heavily. I don't know why my old man is so crazy. He doesn't want me to go to Hanlin Academy, and he plans to ask the emperor to send me out for training. This is not sincerity. Torture me. I heard that Li Lao Hanlin will resign soon. Xiao Shenjiao put the pen down on the paper and wrote slowly. What does that have to do with me? Gu Yuanbei's voice gradually became lower. He was not stupid. Xiao Shenjiao had reminded him like this. How could he not understand? Once Li Lao Hanlin resigned, there was no one else but his father to succeed him as a Hanlin scholar. If he had entered the Hanlin Academy at this time, I am afraid people would gossip about him. Although the Hanlin Academy has no real power, it has many scholars. There are many people who want to win over. Then there's no need for me to go that far to Jingzhou, right? It's not like you don't know that place. It's very desolate. Gu Yuanbei changed the subject as he said it. I don't know how Sister Leun survived in a place like that for 15 years. The year is really miserable. What did you say? Su Ye walked over, vaguely heard Gu Yuanbei mention Su Leun, and asked subconsciously. Brothers Gu Yuanbei walked up to Su Ye, put their arms around Su Ye, put their hands on his shoulders and said, Brother Su, when is Sister Leun's birthday, so I can prepare a gift for her? You are more intimate than me. Su Ye pretended to be impatient and pushed Gu Yuanbei away. I'm warning you, don't have any thoughts about my sister. Oh, I think of her as my sister, so it's a bit hurtful for you to say that. Gu Yuanbei held his heart delicately and complained. Su Yan knew that his best friend didn't have that intention for his sister, but strangely enough, Gu Yuanbei didn't care so much about Su Weiner before. Is it possible that there is really some fate involved in this? Yunar's birthday is in May, so there's still some time left. That's good, it's not too late. Gu Yuanbei nodded. But neither of them noticed Xiao Shenjiao's eyes darkened a bit. There was an assassin who assassinated King An. This matter quickly reached the ears of Emperor Jianwen. Such a thing could happen under the emperor's feet. Emperor Jianwen was naturally furious and ordered King Jin to investigate closely. At the same time, he asked the imperial army to assist King Jin. King An was injured and had to complain to Emperor Jianwen. It was a blessing in disguise and he got a lot of good things. From the surface, it seems that the atmosphere in the palace is quite harmonious. But in fact, the assassination of King An was a switch. The battle for the inheritance has begun. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 279. Chapter 279 The Countryside Lord. Sinning Palace. Hearing that the Queen Mother was in trouble, Emperor Jianwen rushed over after leaving court. Mother, do you have anything to tell me? There are only the Queen Mother, Emperor Jianwen, mother and son, and a few caring palace attendants in the palace, so naturally there is no need to be too restrained. Emperor Jianwen smoothed his clothes and sat down next to the Queen Mother. The late emperor had been away at war for many years and had not many heirs. Emperor Jianwen was the eldest son and had received the teachings of the late emperor, so the succession ceremony was not unexpected. The Queen Mother also has only one child, Emperor Jianwen, so the relationship between mother and son goes without saying. It's not a big deal, it's related to the Su family and the Sun family. Is that what Sulayun asked you for? Emperor Jianwen asked about the birthday banquet a few days ago. The Queen Mother nodded, exactly. Subsequently, she told Emperor Jianwen about the Su family's affairs one by one. Just looking at her son's expression, the Queen Mother sensed some clues. Emperor Jianwen's expression remained unchanged, as if he had known about this for a long time. What does the Queen want me to do? The dove occupies the magpie's nest, so naturally it has to return to its original shape. The Queen Mother's tone was a bit serious. Emperor Jianwen shook his head and said, Mother, I can agree to other things, but not this matter. Emperor, what do you mean? If Sulayun is dissatisfied, I can grant her the title of countryside lord, but I cannot issue an edict on this matter. Emperor Jianwen looked calm and his voice was a little more irrefutable. The Queen Mother also knew Emperor Jianwen, and with his behavior, it was obvious that there was no room for further discussion on this matter. Furthermore, Emperor Jianwen would rather grant the title of rural lord than agree to it. The Queen Mother was thoughtful, and after a while, she said, in this case, there are not many AI family, but I can't bear to deal with that girl. The position of a rural king is enough. Emperor Jianwen arrived lightly. If my mother has nothing else to do, I will leave first. The emperor goes to work. The Queen Mother looked at Emperor Jianwen's retreating figure and couldn't help but sigh. Mammy Yu stepped forward and said, Master, don't be embarrassed. I think Miss Su won't mind if you can get a country prince. Look at the AI family, I don't care about that girl from the country. After the Queen Mother said it, she thought for a while. Xiu Fang, I remember that the emperor brought a jade ruyi last time, and when the time comes, someone will send it to that girl. Girl? Yes. Mammy Yu was surprised at the Queen Mother's opinion of Sulayun. The position of a country king, that Miss Su still doesn't care about it? There are only a few jade ruyi of that quality in the entire palace, and the Queen Mother herself only has this one, and she wants to give it away. Although she could not understand the Queen Mother's thoughts, Aunt Yu did not say anything. They just obeyed the master's arrangements as servants. The imperial edict came soon. Sun Mansion. Sulayun learned that there was an imperial edict and hurried to the front hall. Mother and others were already waiting in the front hall, and they were waiting for Sulayun to come over before Wang Gonggong announced his decree. He was granted the title of King of Pingle Township, and was given 100 acres of fertile land, and a villa. He was given the title of King of Pingle Township. Eunuch Wan finished announcing the decree. After waiting for a long time, Sulayun was not seen accepting the decree. He raised his eyes and looked at Sulayun, who was kneeling on the ground, coughed lightly and said, "Mr. Pingle Township, you still don't accept the order." Sulayun lowered his head and his lips were a little white. "Yunur!" Sun Gro shouted softly. Sun Shao on the side was even more pale, but everyone knew that this was an imperial edict, and if Sulayun did not accept it, he would be disobeying it. That is a serious crime punishable by beheading. The daughter of the people received the order, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Sulayun slowly closed his eyes and spoke softly. Eunuch Wan breathed a sigh of relief. He did not expect such a situation to happen. He handed over the imperial edict and said, "Mr. Pingle Township, this is a good thing. Congratulations to our family first." "You're welcome." Eunuch Wan Sulayun stood up, took the imperial edict, and smiled lightly. "I was overjoyed just now, but it was a waste of time. I hope Eunuch Wan won't take it to heart. Our family understands what Xiang Jun said. Eunuch Wan is a smart man, so why can't he understand Sulayun's meaning? He still has a good impression of Sulayun. Since he has accepted the imperial edict, there is nothing to say about this matter." Mami Zhang stepped forward and handed over a red envelope, then sent Eunuch Wan out. "Yunur!" Sun Gro walked to Sulayun and looked at the imperial edict in her daughter's hand. She still didn't understand it. Why did the emperor inexplicably grant Yunur the title of Lord of the Township? In the past, those girls who were granted the title of rural monarch have made great contributions. Also, Yunur has only been back to Beijing for half a year, so what else is she doing? "Forefather." Sulayun looked at Sun Shao. Although the latter's face was gloomy, he just waved his hand. "Your Majesty's intention is also very clear. If we mention this matter again, it will only make His Majesty unhappy." "Yunur knows." Sulayun understood what Sun Shao meant and handed the imperial edict to Lian Xian for her to keep. Sun Gro was still confused and was sent back to the small courtyard by Sulayun. "Yunur, what on earth is going on?" "Mother, Your Majesty does not want us to investigate Suwaner's matter." "Why is this?" Sun Gro made a sound in surprise. "Using the position of a country king just to completely cover up Suwaner's matter? The bargaining chips of these two parties are not balanced no matter how you look at them." Sulayun couldn't explain it. Did the Su family and Emperor Jianwen have some connection that others didn't know about? Of course, the news of being granted the title of Xiangjun could not be hidden. Soon, all the dignitaries in the capital knew about it. The news also reached the Li family. "Xiangjun, why does Sulayun?" Suwaner looked shocked when she heard Yao's words. She has worked hard for so many years, but she has only gained the reputation of a talented woman in the capital. Why can Sulayun become the village monarch? "Miss, calm down." Yao lowered her head, not daring to look directly at Suwaner. Since the people in charge of the Li family have become sick and injured, Suwaner is now in charge of all matters in the inner house, and her temper has become even louder. "Madam, the young lady has lost her temper again." The maid hurried over, panting. Suwaner took a few deep breaths and said, "I'll be there right away." When I arrived at Li Minmin's yard, I heard a crackling sound before I even got closer. You all get out of here. Min Min. Su Wainer shouted softly, and in the room, Li Min Min paused slightly. When there was no sound, Su Wainer approached the room and saw Li Min Min standing among a pile of debris. Li Min Min also had 2 minor scratches on her cheek, and the wounds were still bleeding. Don't go and ask for the doctor yet. Su Wainer ordered sternly, avoided the debris, walked forward, and pulled Li Min Min to sit down. Min Min, what's wrong with you? Sister-in-law, I don't want to get married. If you don't marry, what will happen to your innocence? Su Wainer looked like she was thinking about Li Min Min and patted her back gently to comfort her. Then I will become a monk anyway. If I am asked to marry that kind of person, I might as well just die. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 280. Chapter 280. Double the dose. Speaking, Li Min Min bent down, picked up a fragment from the ground, and put it directly on his neck. Min Min. Su Wainer exclaimed, but she froze on the spot and did not dare to step forward to stop her. Min Min, please calm down first. Li Min Min held up the fragments with a determined expression. She would rather die than marry that kind of person. Thinking of this, Li Min Min's eyes turned red. On that day, she was originally invited by a friend to go to a restaurant to wait for her friend. Unexpectedly, her clothes got wet, and when she was changing clothes, someone looked at her. This incident caused quite a fuss, and her innocence was ruined. In desperation, the Li family had no choice but to agree to the marriage. At least I can save some face. But that young master of the Zhou family. Li Min Min bit her lip. He had several concubines in his backyard, not to mention that the other party was extremely ugly. How could she be willing to marry one of them? Sister-in-law, please help Min Min. Min Min, it's not that I won't help you, but this matter was decided by my grandmother. Do you want to disobey your grandmother's wishes? Su Wainer seemed to feel sorry for Li Min Min, but she was very happy in her heart. She still remembers how Li Rui was drugged and how Li Min Min ridiculed her. Now seeing Li Min Min like this, I feel a little happier. The displeasure that Suleun was given the title of township lord just now subsided a little. That means I'm going to die. Li Min Min said, suddenly raising her hand to scratch her neck. Miss Min Min, no. A clear male voice sounded, and a voice suddenly rushed in and snatched the fragment from Li Min Min's hand. Blood flowed from between the man's fingers and fell to the ground drop by drop. Su Wainer's eyes widened and she looked at the man in horror. Li Rui. Elder brother. Li Min Min opened her mouth slightly and looked at Li Rui in front of her in disbelief. Brother, are you awake? Before Li Min Min could touch Li Rui, he saw the latter closing his eyes and falling backward. Li Min Min hurriedly caught the person, but her strength was weak and her whole body was so weak that she almost couldn't hold the person. Fortunately, the maid next to me was quick and ran forward to lend a hand. The doctor rushed over and took Li Rui's pulse first. Master Li's condition is still the same as before. The doctor shook his head, but he was also confused. He did not see Li Rui wake up, and he could not explain why a person who had been comatose for several days suddenly woke up and suddenly fell into coma again. Maybe it's the connection between brother and sister, maybe Master Li felt something was going to happen to Miss Li and suddenly woke up. This explanation is really far-fetched, but the doctor can't give any other reasons. Looking at Li Rui lying on the bed, Su Wainer breathed a sigh of relief. When Li Rui snatched the fragment just now, she thought the other party was healed. Fortunately, not really. Li Min Min's injuries on her face were also treated with medicine. Perhaps she was shocked by Li Rui's sudden awakening, and she didn't say anything more about dying. Min Min, brother Rui loves you so much. If he gets better one day and finds that you are no longer here, how sad will he be? Su Weiner saw that Li Minmin's mood was stable, so she started to persuade her. Li Minmin closed her eyes and said softly, "Sister-in-law, I want to be alone for a while. Don't tell grandma and the others what happened today. Don't worry, I won't let anyone tell anyone." Seeing this, Su Weiner didn't stay long, got up and left. Back in the courtyard, Su Weiner quickly asked Yuyeo to call Granny Lan. "Grandma Lan, what's going on with Li Rui? This slave doesn't know either." Grandma Lan shook her head. Su Weiner took a deep breath. "From today on, if we double the dose of medicine, I won't believe that Li Rui will still wake up." "Yes." Yuyeo shrank her body and responded. Late night. Li Minmin hugged herself and sat on the bed. The stomach makes a growling sound. She lowered her head, stretched out her hand to touch her flat belly, and sighed, her expression extremely empty. There was a sound in the room, and Li Minmin turned around to look. Before she saw anyone, her acupuncture points were tapped. Only the eyes can move. The man in black appeared in front of Li Minmin, and then he took off his mask. "Master Wuovai." Li Minmin couldn't speak. She only made a few muffled groans from her throat, and her eyes widened a lot. Taoist Wuovai said calmly, "Miss Li, are you worried about something? Why not let me help you?" Li Minmin's eyes were full of confusion and surprise. Is this still the Taoist master Wuovai she knew? How could you do such a thing of sneaking into a woman's boudoir? "Ms. Li, if you think it's okay, just blink your eyes and I will help you unlock the acupuncture points." Hearing what Master Wuovai said, Li Minmin hesitated for a moment and then blinked. The next moment, Taoist Master Wuovai tapped her twice on the shoulder. Li Minmin almost pounced forward after unlocking the acupuncture points. "Master Wuovai, what are you doing? Does Miss Li not want to get married?" Taoist priest Wuovai stroked his beard and asked one word at a time. Li Minmin nodded quickly, "Taoist priest, can you help me?" "Nature." Taoist priest Wuovai nodded slightly, waved to Li Minmin, and whispered a few words in her ear. "Ms. Li, do you remember?" "Don't worry, I've remembered it all." There was a way to prevent her from getting married, and Li Minmin's face turned rosy. Seeing this, Master Wuovai left with peace of mind. Li Minmin finally had a good sleep, and when she woke up, she felt much refreshed. At breakfast time, I also ate too much. Seeing her current appearance, the maids also breathed a sigh of relief. After breakfast, Li Minmin went to find Su Weiner. "Sister-in-law, I have thought about it. In order not to worry my brother, I agreed to get married." Su Weiner thought it was Li Rui's waking up yesterday that really made Li Minmin think about it, so she smiled and said, "It's good if you think so. Maybe if you get along with Mr. Zhou a few more times, you will be able to find out how good Mr. Zhou is." Thinking of the pockmarked face, Li Minmin twitched her lips. "Sister-in-law, you are right, so I want you to make arrangements for me. I want to get along with Mr. Zhou more before we get married, is that okay?" "How could this not be possible?" Su Weiner said with a smile, "Of course, I'll have someone make arrangements right away. It is said to be immediate, but it is indeed not slow." That afternoon, Li Minmin took her maid to the restaurant to meet Mr. Zhou. In the private room, Li Minmin held back her nausea and talked to young Master Zhou. "The last time I had a glimpse, Miss Li's appearance has been engraved in my mind. When we met again today, I realized that Miss Li is even more beautiful than I thought." Mr. Zhou had a pockmarked face and said disgusting words. Li Minmin felt like she was going to vomit out the food she had eaten in the morning. She covered her mouth, swallowed, and forced herself to smile at Mr. Zhou. "Mr. Zhou, I heard that the Poria Coco's cakes across from the restaurant are very good. I wonder if you can buy some for me." End of this chapter.